Good morning, Moms Master Books. Hope you're having an awesome week. Hey, today I'm going to talk about the 4 tendencies of human nature. It's a little different today. We're actually doing like this huge shuffle in our office. So the magic, where the marketing operates, we're moving into the middle of the building. The design and editorial team is all moving into the upstairs, into our space. So I'm broadcasting from one of the empty offices right now because my office is completely being destroyed. So hopefully we'll have that settled down next week. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the 4 tendencies. And the reason I want to do this is I just actually came across this book. The book is it's The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. I'm not saying that I recommend the purchase of this book, but there are some things in this book that I was amazed by that really helped give me some insight into my relationships, both with my wife, my children, my boss, my coworkers, and so I thought, well, this would be good to share because I know some of you may be struggling with my kids are just like, why are they acting this way? And I thought, man, this gave so many answers to that. So I'm going to dive into it, and hopefully it's helpful. As I do, I want you, if there's a personality type that you identify with, okay, as I start describing the personality types and some of the ways that they operate, if there's one that maybe resonates with you, like it just feels like, ooh, that kind of identify with that, post it and say, yeah, I'm an upholder, an obliger, a rebel, or a questioner, okay? Okay, so again, the book is The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. It's not published by Master Books. It's published by somebody else. I enjoy books and projects that help me understand behavioral science, human behavior, motivation, understanding how to motivate teams to perform better, and whether that team is my family or my coworkers or my church when I was pastoring, anything like that. I enjoy the sciences, and I've always enjoyed if you've ever taken the DISC profile, and that was amazing to me. When we took the DISC profile, there were probably 30 leaders in a homeschool group in that room, and they talked about the D personality, and they said, hey, do we have any Ds here? And yeah, I'm a D. I thought, man, that's awesome, because I'm a D. I love that. I was the only one in the room, and he's like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, because usually if there's 2 Ds in a room, they'll kill each other. Well, that was kind of insightful for me, because up to that point, I thought everybody was like me, right? Then taking tests like the Enneagram test or the Briggs-Meyer test or different personality tests help give us some insight when we understand ourselves, and we can help others understand, or we understand those around us, that they're not all like us. I think it's helpful. Well, the 4 Tendencies book is actually very simple. It simplifies things, but what it does is, okay, think of a clock, if you will, and at 12 o'clock would be the upholder personality. So let me tell you about the upholder personality. Well, first let me describe. So you have the upholder at the top. We have kind of the rebel at the bottom. At it's backwards for where you would be, but kind of at that, here, the 9 o'clock spot would be your questioner. And then the obliger is over here at 3 o'clock. So we have kind of this circle: upholder, rebel, questioner, obliger. So let's start with the upholder personality. The upholder personality, they tend to meet outer expectations, what other people in society expects of them, and they also tend to meet inner expectations. So they have a very strong internal guidance system, and they also follow the cultural norms, what's from the outside. Their motto would be, discipline is my freedom. So they're very good at discipline, self-regulation. They uphold the law, if you will. At the bottom would be the rebel. The rebels resist outside expectations, and they resist internal expectations. Their motto would be, you can't make me, and neither can I. That would be an extreme rebel. And so that would be that personality. A questioner, they resist outer expectations and they meet inner expectations. So their motto would be, I'll comply if you convince me why. Maybe Yeah, okay, so I'm going to keep going. The obliger, there at the 3 o'clock position, would be they meet outer expectations and they resist inner expectations. So they're the kind of people that will put their own needs kind of to the side, and they're more concerned about what do you expect from me? Tell me what you expect from me, and I'll do that. That's what I need to do. Questioners, they're more like anything you ask them. They'll just want to know, why is this? So that's the two contrasts on the sides: upholder, rebel, questioner, obliger. So, okay, let me read to you. If you're an upholder and I read these things, let me know. These phrases almost will feel like warm to you. Okay, hopefully you know what I'm saying. Okay, so if you're an upholder, I can do all things I want to do, and I can do the things I don't, and I can do the things I don't want to do. Another phrase would be, why didn't you just handle it the way I told you to? Another, your lack of planning is not my emergency. Another, do what's right even when people call you uptight, or just do it. Now, my wife is an upholder, all right? So she's really amazing at governing herself and also meeting the needs that others have put on her as well. In the Bible, upholders may be people like Daniel, who knew internally what was right and then navigated the atmosphere there. James in the Bible, the brother of Jesus, the book of James is like perfect, written by an upholder. Like, he knows who he is and he knows what society's expectations are, and it's like he just holds the line. He's just do it, right? So that would be a couple of people in the Bible that we could see would have those type of personalities. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so for the upholder, some of their strengths would be a self-starter, self-motivated, conscientious, reliable, thorough, sticks to a schedule, eager to understand and meet expectations. Like that describes Kristen to a T. Possible weaknesses, now I'm not going to say this does describe Kristen to a T, but possible weaknesses: defensive, rigid, often struggles when plans or schedules are changed, can seem humorless and uptight, uneasy when rules are ambiguous and undefined, impatient when others need reminders, deadlines, supervisions, or discussions. They can be a little demanding, maybe become anxious about obeying rules that don't even exist. So that would be kind of the summary of the upholder personality. Okay, so then let's look at the questioner. Okay, so upholder, questioner. Some phrases that a questioner may resonate with would be, I'll comply if you convince me why. Prove it. Because I said so, I don't think so. Don't lose sight of why. Blind obedience is servitude, or is it? Wait, what? Justification leads to motivation. Seek and seek and seek and seek, and maybe you shall find. Optimizing life even when we don't want to. But why? It's my way or the wrong way. Why do we need a motto? So questioners are people, you probably have kids like this. You need to go wash your hands. Why? And they begin at a very young age asking the questions. Why do I need to do this? So questioners, if you have a questioner child, like if you're an upholder and you strongly, you know who you are and you know what's expected, and your questioner child drives you nuts with that, then see, understanding that they may not be like you. So you may have a child who's a lot like you, who says, you know what, I kind of get this. But then all of a sudden, my other child is like, everything I ask is why. Now, once they understand the why and they're convinced themselves, then they have the internal motivation to do whatever they need to do. So, okay, some of the, strengths and weaknesses of questioners. Questioners are data driven because they need to understand the why. They're fair-minded according to his or her judgment. Have you ever seen that? Somebody who is very fair-minded as long as they believe it should be. They're willing to play the devil's advocate. I have a son who loves to do this. He is a questioner wholeheartedly. Once he understands the why, he is like, you can't stop him. But sometimes he enjoys playing the devil's advocate to the point that it can drive you nuts. Comfortable with bucking the system if it's warranted. They're inner directed. They don't really need to be outer directed because their navigation system comes from within. They're unwilling to accept authority without justification. So just because you said I told you so doesn't mean they're going to do it, and they don't own it and make it theirs. Possible weaknesses: they can suffer from analysis paralysis. They need too much information to prove it. Impatient with what he or sees as others' complacency. If they feel that other people aren't necessarily as motivated as they are, then they can be a little bit impatient that way. Crackpot potential. Unable to accept closure on matters that other considered questioned or settled if the questions remain unanswered. Have you ever seen that where somebody it's not good enough to say I'm sorry. They need to know why it happened. How are we going to make sure this never happens? Da 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 da. They may refuse to observe expectations that others find fair or at least non-optional. Traffic regulations. And they may resist others' questions. So you may have a child or you may be a questioner. And so on the flip side is the obliger. An obliger, phrases or comments that might resonate with an obliger. You can count on me and I'm counting on you to count on me. Now I have a daughter who is this way. If we send her to the grocery store, beyond the shadow of a doubt, she will call. There's 4 ketchup. She said, get ketchup. Which ketchup do you want? And we'll FaceTime while I explain what ketchup to get. I actually don't mind it. It's kind of cute. But, and I've worked with people like this. In fact, probably a lot of the team that I work with are more in the obliger role, and it fits well with my personality type. But I've worked with people before that are just like, just tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. That's it. Just tell me what you want from me. And I'm always like, why do I need to tell you what to do? Like why? And I couldn't understand it. I just would get even a little frustrated at times. And I think that that's another point for me to look and say, wow, that's their tendency. Now, the thing about this, the author makes a point, is these are things like you're kind of just born this way. Like your wiring is set up where you're either going to be a questioner, an obliger, an upholder, or a rebel, and life may change you, and you may learn to manage yourself, and others may learn to manage you too. But this is kind of how you're wired. It's your bend. And so for an obliger, let's see. Some of the others are do not disturb. By serving others, I serve myself. If I have to, I will. If I want to, I won't. Pretty deep right there. I'll do anything you ask until I won't. We need an outside commitment for everything, even to spend time with ourselves. Have you ever seen somebody who is saying, they'll often say, I need to make more time for myself? Usually they're feeling the stress because they're making everybody else a priority. Say yes to less. I have a long wick with a quick burn. Treat yourself as you treat others. How can I be of service to you? I don't want to, but I will anyways. All for one and one for all. See, as you kind of get a feeling like my kid might be an obliger, then you can start tailoring your parenting a little bit towards them. And I think even in instilling the faith, I think that there's places where, as I've read through this book, I've kind of been like, okay, there are some places that I expected my kids to be like me, but actually what I needed to do was help them answer some big questions. Or maybe I needed to help them understand who to make a priority, service a priority to, that type of thing. Okay. So the last, well, let me see. Okay, strengths. I think I have strengths and weaknesses of an obliger. Obligers make good bosses, responsive leaders, and team players. They feel a great obligation to meet other people's expectations. They're responsible, willing to go the extra mile, and they respond to outer accountability. If you're expecting them from them, then that will help. Somebody asked about the book. Again, the book is The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. It is not a Christian book. I'm not making the recommendation. It's a book that I came across in researching human behavior, and I thought this would be helpful to some people. But that's the book that I'm actually reading from. Let's see. Okay, so as far as possible weaknesses, susceptible to overwork and burnout. May show the destructive pattern of obliger rebellion. Rebels tend to take obligers places they shouldn't go. They're exploitable. They may become resentful. They may have trouble saying no or imposing limits. So you have, sometimes perfectionists could easily be the upholders, right, at the top, where they have strong motivations, they have strong outward motivations. Perfectionists could also be obligers, where they just need to know what people are expecting from them. This is one of the reasons where Brittany, who's usually with me, but she's off today, so I'm flying solo. One of the reasons that she struggles is because she's an obliger, and she just tell me what you want. And so when she would do a textbook that wanted, like, how do you feel? She's like, who cares how I feel? What answer do you want from me? That's what I want to know. What do you want from me? And so her obliger personality would cause her to almost like go a little nutty trying to figure out how to answer the questions instead of having an opinion of her own. I have no understanding of her personality type at all, but I appreciate her, but I don't understand her. Okay, so the last one we come to is the rebel. Now again, the rebel's motto is, you can't make me and neither can I. It's hard when I have to, and it's so easy when I want to. Amen. May the bridges I burn light my way. Amen. You're not the boss of me. Amen. I do things only in my own way, a blessing and a curse. Ask forgiveness, not permission. I do what I want because I feel like it. Don't look, just leap. Rules must be broken, except that would actually be a rule, so we're not going to apply it. Freedom is my discipline. You can't make me, and neither can I. I'm happy to when I don't have to. You can't spell rebel without B. So those are some of the words that might actually resonate with a rebel. I don't know if you can tell, but actually those words like light me up and I can feel it. And as I've read through this, I've realized, okay, I'm actually probably fit into this category of a rebel, which means I don't have a lot of external motivation, right? And I rebel against myself, which is why I've developed some things to help connect myself. Well, sometimes even in dealing with people, like a group, I have a hard time understanding how somebody could care what their mother-in-law thinks, or they could care what the people around them think. Like, that's not, who cares, right? So I'm going to give some examples of this too. So, okay, so let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of a rebel. Strengths: they are independently minded. They're able to think outside the box. They're unswayed by conventional wisdom, willing to go his way or her own way to buck social conventions, in touch with his or her authentic desires, and they're spontaneous. Possible weaknesses: they're likely to resist when asked or told to do something. How annoying would that be, especially if you're an upholder? Uncooperative, inconsiderate, have trouble accomplishing tasks that need to be done consistently the same way every time. Act as though ordinary rules don't apply. Restless, may find it difficult to settle down in a job or relationship or a city. They struggle with routines and planning, and they may be indifferent to reputation. Okay, so as I've listed those off, and some of you maybe could identify really well with, boy, my kid acts this way, or my kid is that way, or maybe, I'm an upholder, things are important to me. It's important to me how my navigation system. It's important to me others in society's navigation system. And it seems like my spouse or my kid or whoever, they just are bucking the system all the time. Or maybe it's always, why do I have to do things that way? So here's what my takeaway on this was. I started listening. I found out about her in a podcast, and I was just listening to it, and then I bought the book for some more detail, and I was like, wow, I actually am a rebel personality. And Kristen is an upholder, and one thing she says is there's two personalities that are like oil and vinegar. There's usually going to be friction and sparks between them if they don't kind of figure out how to kind of work with each other and appreciate each other's differences. And so Kristen is the upholder, and for all these years, I would say she's my conscience in a lot of times, because she holds me accountable to do the right thing. She would get frustrated with that because she don't have an understanding of why can't I just figure it out for myself, and maybe even consider that to be a little bit selfish. I don't disagree, and I think in some ways not having this awareness of myself at a young age probably caused some situations that I wish I could have avoided, because there is a difference, and because of my nature, like rebels are the least of the population group, but they're very well known. They oftentimes will end up in prison and juvenile detention centers, or in bad situations. Ironically, there's a paradox with rebels. Rebels also fit really well into law. They make really good police, and they also are good clergy. They make good pastors. There's enough rules there to keep them in line, but just enough to break. And so, I think I made a pretty decent pastor, but I broke most of the typical what church should look like rules, which is what the church needed. So I was recently saying some of this to somebody who's an upholder, and they were like, then what use is there for a rebel? Like, who would want a rebel? And I was like, okay, so I get it. We can be kind of annoying, and I get it. The principal knew me by name, and my teachers knew me by name, right? But that's okay, because we were also able to do things like step into a church situation that had gone from 500 people to 16 people, break down all the conventions, take a few people off, lose some reputation to rebuild a church back to a healthy place, because that's what rebels do. They like being the underdog. They like being told they can't do something, and they'll do it more. And so maybe it's good when you have a son or a daughter who's a bit of a rebel and you're an upholder, not to tell them what to do, because you know what's right to do. You have that system. It's not necessarily to tell them that, but to give them the options and then the consequences, and then let them be the one who chooses, and be creative in that, because when a rebel chooses their path, they're pretty good at accomplishing that. I've often said, I'll take any hill you give me, right? But I need to kind of make it my hill. I have to make it my hill. In fact, if you tell me what to do, there's nothing that destroys my motivation more than telling me what to do. Or if I'm doing it and then you tell me that I need to do it more or harder, you're just like a deflated balloon. Between Kristen and I, like when we would go on vacation, I don't like booking hotels. I just like to drive until we have to find a hotel. And if we don't find a hotel, we'll sleep in the car. That's not Kristen. Kristen is the upholder, right? So for her, now what she does, and this is important to her, so I'm happy with it now, but she will call and book hotels at predetermined locations, and she kind of has everything mapped out, because she don't like having to go through the stress of where are we going to sleep tonight, where are we going to eat. She won't go to conventions with me anymore because I don't like getting tickets. I like to try to smooth talk my way in, and to her that's humiliating. So now she'll tell me, I'm not even going in. I'm not going with you, period, until you show me proof that we have tickets and that they're pre-ordered and it's all taken care of. Rebels tend not to want to pay bills, right? So here's the thing. I'm going to publicly shame myself. So I don't like paying bills. It's not because I can't. It's just the deadline of a bill kind of annoys me. And there's some thrill that kind of comes sometimes from a shut-off notice. So there's a joke, because there have been a couple times where like I've had to chase the water guys down to turn back on the water. It doesn't really bother me. It's kind of thrilling. There's like an adrenaline rush that happens when I catch it right before they shut it off. Now, what's not good is for Kristen, who doesn't like that, who can't even imagine somebody not paying the water bill. What are people thinking? The water department knows me by name. They wouldn't even know me if I didn't. If I paid my bill, I'd be like everybody else in this community. They wouldn't know them. But for me, they know me because I don't pay my bill. And they have to call me and say, Mr. Pratt, we know that you pay your bill every month. Do you want to pay it? And then that works out great. If not, then I'm chasing the guy down the road saying, can you turn my water back on? Because my wife is not happy. So these are the things that cause friction, right? Now, if you're an upholder, you're looking at me and you're saying, that is so irresponsible. That is so, like, what are you? Do you have mental issues? Did your mother drop you on your head when you were a baby? Is this what happened to you because you act that way? The reality is, maybe. I don't know. But what I do know is it's that aspect that the Lord has used to accomplish things. Spiritually, from a rebel, who would I equate in the Bible? See, I think Nehemiah was a rebel. I think Nehemiah looked at Jerusalem and he saw the direction Jerusalem was going, and he didn't really care about his reputation in Babylon. He was more concerned about what he saw as a need, and then he went and he kicked butt in Jerusalem. Like he was beating on people, right? He was shaking them by the hair. He was kicking them out of town. He was the boss in Jerusalem. And I think most people, if you're an obliger, coming into that situation is going to be really tough. So I think Nehemiah was that person. I think Samson was that person. And that's the part where when I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, take notice. Samson didn't take correction. He did what he wanted to do, and he broke conventions. And so I see Nehemiah and I see myself. Now, I was different than a lot of kids my age, even in when I was being in school, because like somehow I connected to martyrs. So I read Fox's Book of Martyrs, and I saw these men and women who broke convention and stood up for the Lord. And that all of a sudden, that level of commitment to Christ kind of became a guidance system. Now, self-control and all those things, there's, the growing through the processes. But that was the place with being a Christian was, I wanted to be a Christian because that's not what people were doing. And so I could kind of rebel against everybody else who was partying and doing what they did, because I was going to go in and I was going to be that person. Questioners. Who would be good questioners in the Bible? I think Moses is a good questioner. I think Moses kind of needed God to explain things to him before he was motivated to do it. In fact, God would get a little bit impatient with Moses even. Thomas, obvious example, he actually has to have proof that it's Jesus before he commits. So there's that. I think Peter was a questioner. I think once Peter understood the game and it was his, look out, world. But Peter had to own it. Peter actually he did follow rules. Once he got it, he did what Jesus expected of him. What about obligers? Who would obligers be in the Bible? I think Noah would be an obliger. Somebody who builds an ark for 100 years and to prepare for a flood because God said so. To me, that's maybe God gave him more than what we have in the Bible, but I think Noah might be one. Abner, the commander of Saul's army, I think he was an obliger. I mean, he did what Saul said, and then he went right to David and said, okay, everything I've done for Saul, I'll do for you. That to me seems like his loyalty and everything in that kind of lended itself to that. Hosea, the prophet Hosea, who was married to a woman of ill repute, maybe was an obliger because he didn't just, he had to kind of shut down some of his own stuff to be able to do that. And then Pilate. I think Pilate tended to want to know, what do people want? He didn't. Even his wife was annoyed with him because he didn't take a strong stance. So those would be some biblical examples. So there's different levels of annoyance. As parents, this last weekend, Kristen went to a scrapbooking convention. I had a lot of activity going on. I had 4 of my youngest at home with me all weekend. By the time it got done, dad this, dad that, all trying to keep the house clean and all that type of stuff. There's that level of, I'm just burning out and exhausted and tired. I need a break from this. There's that. But then there's the friction that comes from different personality types. And I think instead of looking at others who aren't like me as being annoyances and inconveniences, I think we would gain something from beginning to look at people and being thankful that God gives us people different than ourselves. My spontaneity, my ability to step into situations like even a publishing industry where a lot of publishing houses are condensing or seeing declines in sales and that type of thing, and to come in and say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to succeed. We're going to grow because nobody expects it. And so we're the underdog, and they're going to recognize that. Being able to appreciate that that's there. Now, there's weaknesses associated with my personality type, absolutely, and they can be annoying. But to be thankful that God made me who I am and has taken us where we've gone. For me to be thankful for Kristen, if I'm walking and there's a sign that says authorized personnel only, well, if I give myself authorization, is there any reason I can't cut through there? Or if I say to Kristen, I authorize you to go through there, then she should be able to go through there, right? To have Kristen say, that's not what it means, we're not doing that, I value that. She's kept me out of some bad places because she's been my conscience in those places where it would be easy for me to break rules that weren't meant to be broken. And I'm thankful that the Lord gave me that. I think my obligers, right? I have to be careful because I'm a rebel, but at the same time, I'm thankful for the obligers that serve with such a gracious heart. And if I'm careful not to abuse them or take advantage of them, but to be able to appreciate who God made them without trying to force them to have an opinion or those. And see, I haven't always understood people were different than me. For those of you who pay your bills on time and enjoy that and don't enjoy chasing down the water guys, I'm trying to understand you, and I'll try to appreciate you for that. So just that level of knowing that, our kids, the friction point of our kids' personalities, every time I ask my kid to go do their math and they ask me why, and I have to have a why for them, okay, understand that once they understand the why and they have that internal motivation, you won't be able to stop them. So rather than just getting annoyed because they're asking why, appreciating the fact that they have strong internal motivations, and if they own it, they will do it and accomplish it, then work to meet that need. Or maybe you're the questioner. Maybe you don't understand the whys, and that's always something you're needing everybody around you to give you the why. Then appreciating the fact that not everybody cares. An obliger really doesn't care why. They care, what do you want me to do? And if that's the case, then you can be sensitive to the fact that your need to know why before you do something can actually be kind of annoying to people who aren't like you, but you can get yourself, your own solution solved. Even with rebels, I'm finding, okay, so a rebel can trick themselves into good behavior. Now, if you're not a rebel, this all sounds like really bad, but if you're a rebel, you know what I'm talking about right now. I can say to myself, I don't want to be known as the kind of person who doesn't pay their bills. People don't expect me to pay my bills, so I'm going to prove to everybody that I can pay my bills. I'm going to show you that I can pay my bills. Why? Because you don't think I can. Now, when people expect me to, it's hard. But when people don't expect me to, almost at that point, I'm like, all right, then I can do this. I can do that. If I feel like the choice is mine and that I'm making the choice and there's a motivation that's different than what culture expects, I'm telling you, there's very little I can't accomplish. I know that. In fact, a lot of people end up, obligers especially, we used to have this model when I pastored, that I would convince people to get in a raft with me, and before they knew it, we were 5 miles down the creek, and they had no idea why they were there or why they had agreed to get in there. Probably because as a rebel, I attracted a lot of obligers, and in doing so, it was easy for me to motivate people to go directions they didn't want to go. So if I have an obliger child, like my daughter, understanding that she does better with very concrete answers, yes or no, and I want to stretch her, I want to make sure that she can handle the situations when the answers aren't clear, and I want her to know how to set clear boundaries and those types of things. But I can also be sensitive to the fact that God didn't make her to raise her fist in the air and tell everybody, bug off. That's just not who she is. And so I can appreciate the sensitivity she has and guide her in that way. To my questioners, as a rebel, I can appreciate the fact that they're questioning it. Why should I have to do it if I don't understand it? I can appreciate that aspect and help them own that. To the upholder, and I think the upholders have the hardest, it's the hardest of all for you, because you guys rock. You got strong internal motivations, you know who you are, you know what you're about, and then you don't have a problem following expectations. And the rest of us can appear unorganized, out of control, we can appear mental, all of those things. And usually with an upholder, I would rebel. Grammar police, I get you, you're an upholder. You can't handle the fact that a word is spelled wrong. It's okay, you're an upholder, I'm a rebel, I spell it wrong just to annoy you. That's the way it goes. Right? And that's like these friction points that you feel in a family too, is why is it that my kid just enjoys bucking everything I tell them? They do the opposite of everything I tell them to do. Okay, so now instead of telling them what to do, give them the opportunity. Here's here's some choices you have. Here's some consequences of each. It's your choice. I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to say anything more about it. You just figure it out, and then we'll see where it all falls. And let them experience the consequences of their choices. That works really well for us. Trying to make us do it, or enabling us, or trying to prevent us from experiencing our consequences don't help at all. Rebels need to feel the pain. We need to experience our pain. So, all right. Well, hopefully that's helpful. Again, the talk today was based on this book by Gretchen Rubin, The 4 Tendencies. Again, not a Christian book, and I'm not making the recommendation to purchase it. I want you to know up front that it's not a Christian book, but I do appreciate the simplicity of these 4 personality types and how easy it really is to fit into, to put my kids in these classifications, or to put a husband and wife, Kristen and my personality. Oh my goodness. I think she was drawn to the fact that I was pretty cocky when I was young and confident, so I knew where I was going and I was pretty good. I was drawn to Kristen because she was confident in who she was and she knew what she was about as well. But then as you put the two of us together to manage life together, it's had some challenges, just because obviously if she's conscientious and pure and good, and I'm like break everything just because people say it can't be broken. Oh my goodness, can you imagine? So when we get to heaven, Kristen gets sainthood, and I'm just kind of begging to be able to mow her yard. That's pretty much my hope right now. So, okay. Well, hopefully this was a blessing to you, and I know if you are struggling with children who are opposite of your personality type, can I encourage you? Can I give you just a little bit of encouragement that God uses all of us, And even the bad places, like Samson made bad choices, but God used Samson to bring about judgment. Now, that's not what I want for my life, and it's not what I want for the rebels in my life, but that doesn't mean that God still didn't use that for his good and his glory. And I think sometimes we discount people who aren't like us, but I think we need to step back and realize God made us all different for reasons, and he brings us together for different reasons. And sometimes maybe it's just iron sharpens iron, or it purges something. But the kids that you may be struggling with that are driving you a little bit nuts could just be that God is preparing them for what they have, and what they need to accomplish those tasks are different. It's a different tendency than what you have, but they need you and the balance that you bring to help them become that person. I would not be the person I am without the upholder Kristen in my life, and I value her influence in my life so much. And I'm sure if she was here with me, she would probably tell you that she values my rebellious nature and the spontaneity and the stress that I cause on a daily basis to her by not liking rules and order and all of those things. And she can't tell people how valuable that is to her as well. All right, guys. Hey, well, hopefully that's a blessing. I don't know. God bless you guys. And please don't think less of Master Books because I'm the person talking. All right? I'm just being real with you. And Master Books is an incredible organization. And thankfully, Tim is not a rebel. Tim is an upholder, and he is the owner and president of Master Books. I'm just the guy that needs to get as much attention as possible to Master Books, and so my personality type is perfect for that role. Hey, God bless you guys. We'll talk to you later.